Michael Moore apparently said today, I think Newt Gingrich is one of the escaped members of my staff. He says, this is what I've been saying for 20 years. It's like, if you're carrying Michael Moore's water, that's a bit of a problem.
Uh-oh. That's cruel. That is a cruel, cruel comment. Mitt Romney in the spin room with Hannity last night on Fox. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. And the guy who likes ABBA almost as much as I do, Newt Gingrich, candidate for president, of course, former Speaker of the House. Newt Gingrich, you just heard it. Apparently, you're basically Michael Moore's shadow now.
Well, look, I think that Mitt's entire strategy is to avoid talking facts. And he's got a lot of high-paid consultants giving him clever lines, but it all comes back down to the facts. And I think that the American people deserve to know from any potential president about their record. They deserve to be able to ask questions about their record, and it ought to be fact-based. And my record has been, overwhelmingly public. Everybody knows and can check the record that when I worked with Reagan in the 80s, we created 16 million new jobs. When I worked with Bill Clinton in the 90s, we created 11 million new jobs. I think that's a pretty well clear public record. So one of the two pillars of his campaign is his claims about his business career, which both the Boston Globe and the Washington Post said gave him 3 Pinocchios for, and said he had wildly exaggerated how many jobs he created.
Yeah, one of your ads got 4 Pinocchios. Yeah, one of your ads got 4 Pinocchios, though.
That's right.
I mean, I wouldn't lay down those Pinocchios so quick, but one of your super PACers got 4.
Right, and I asked him to pull it and to edit it and take out the inaccuracies.
Yeah, that was a little different take.
Because I think we actually ought to have a fact-based campaign, and I think we can have a fact-based campaign.
Did you see
last night was a part of it.
Yeah, Bill Kristol wrote a piece at the Weekly Standard where he's talking about electability because a lot of people want to go with the winner, the guy they think they can take on Obama and will be the nominee. And it talk about Gingrich, talk about Rick, but in the end he says, well, Newt Gingrich, well, he has a 28% favorable to a 58% unfavorable in one poll, 27 favorable and 56% unfavorable in another. So Newt shouldn't be underestimated, but it's quite a stretch for Gingrich to claim that he has an obviously better chance to win than Rick Santorum, even against Romney or Barack Obama.
Okay, so Bill Kristol has an opinion. What I would say is, first of all, that the only way you're going to beat Obama is to offset his billion-dollar campaign with a clear debate in which you are able to draw a very sharp, clear distinction. And I think everybody's now watched 15 debates, and there's a pretty general consensus that I would be able to be tough enough and direct enough that I could stand toe-to-toe with Obama, and I could represent conservatism effectively and intensely in a way that would be compelling. And, Frank Luntz commented last night that the standing ovation I got for defending work and the principles of work was the first one he had seen since Ronald Reagan in New Hampshire in 1980.
No, that was a great moment.
Well, I think it's because you can touch people's hearts by bringing up values that they believe in that Barack Obama doesn't believe in. Now, I think in that sense I'm much clearer as a conservative than Mitt Romney, and I have a much better record of designing national campaigns than Rick Santorum, who, after all, lost re-election by the largest margin of any incumbent senator in the history of Pennsylvania. So,
Santorum responded to all of this last night. Let's listen.
I think, Newt is, frankly, just not as conservative as I am on a whole variety of issues. Didn't sit on a couch with Nancy Pelosi. Didn't support an individual mandate. Didn't support the Wall Street bailouts, all of which Newt did, and I didn't.
Isn't this all helping Romney? The more you two go after each other instead of consolidating your forces and your money. I mean, Isn't this just all handing it to Romney when you guys do this?
Look, if the voters who are currently split between Perry, Santorum, and Gingrich all voted for one person, that person would clearly beat Romney by a substantial margin. I'm currently in South Carolina polling running much closer to Romney. I'm a close second. Santorum is either a third or fourth right now. And, of course, Perry, I think, is running fifth. So one of my goals for the next 4 days is to convince South Carolina conservatives that voting for me is the one way that they can stop a moderate from becoming the nominee. And if I can convince enough people that the other votes are for nice guys who aren't going to win, but they functionally help Romney become the nominee, I think we will get as a very substantial switch towards me. That's what we saw last night at the debate. I've been in Florence this morning. We've had great crowds in Florence. We're on the way to Columbia, and I think that we'll continue to have good turnout and good support, and I'm including people who were for Rick Santorum or were for Rick Perry, who are walking up to me now saying, I'm convinced I'm going to be with you now.
Newt, is there a way that you could go beyond just trying to attract those voters to your campaign? Is there not a time today or tomorrow where you and Rick Santorum and Rick Perry can just have the conclave, get together and say, look, the facts of the matter is you can make the argument. I mean, or I know Rick said he could make the argument that you should collapse into him, but you could make the argument and say, look, guys, it's going to be Romney if we don't all pull what we have here and we stand as a united front. That would be a powerful message. And my question to you, Newt, is if it's between Santorum getting a cabinet position with Romney or Santorum coming to you into your campaign, which do you think he'd choose?
Well, I don't. But first of all, I don't think you can't legally do that, and I mean, it would be truly wrong to offer somebody a cabinet position for a behavior. But I think Rick Santorum and I are much closer as personal friends. We're much closer in our conservatism than either of us is to Mitt Romney. So, and then the same is true with Rick Perry. Rick Perry and I are good friends and have been for a long time. And I wrote the foreword to his last book.
Yes.
And I think that we certainly can communicate, and we do communicate, with each other. But it's pretty hard to ask a guy to give up his ambitions. This is. We'll see what happens. I mean, I was very surprised this morning when Karl Rove said that Romney didn't just have to come in first; he had to come in first by a big margin. Because people are beginning to figure out that the conservatives are split, but they won't be much longer. And I think that's probably right. That you're going to see, just as we're now down to 5, we'll be down to 4 or to 3 pretty rapidly. And I think everybody agrees that I'm of the 3 guys who are conservatives, I'm the one with the most staying power and the most resources. And frankly, in places like Florida, where we have Marco Rubio's campaign manager is running our campaign. And where my daughter lives and has helped us build a base in Miami.
You think you can bridge that? You can bridge that. Yeah, you can bridge that gap, Newt, because obviously the gap now with you and Romney before the debate, I would say, is 24 points. So you can bridge that gap in the time that you have.
The gap. The last poll in South Carolina, the gap between us was about 10.
Florida.
And we had Florida will change overnight. If we do very well in South Carolina, Florida will be different overnight.
Do you think
Romney has so much money that he is able to advertise ahead of everybody else? But once you get into the state, it changes. The gap here is much closer than that, and it's clear here that the 3 conservatives together would beat Romney by almost 60-40.
Hence, we go back to our conversation we had in Iowa, where this all started, the idea of an alliance. I can't tell you how many people, Newt, on our Facebook, Twitter, website are just so gangbusters for this idea. And you're right, it takes individuals putting their own personal political ambitions and pride, to some extent, in the backseat for the betterment of the country, does it not?
Well, it does, and it would be. I think it would be a good thing to do, and I'd love to be part of it. But I'm just suggesting to you that since I would probably be the beneficiary, it's pretty hard to ask the other 2 guys to preemptively give up their ambition. I would love for them to do it. I'd love for them to decide to endorse me, and it would make. I think it would actually decide South Carolina. I think that's how big the impact would be.
Do you think your favorability rating, which Crystal just seized on those 2 polls, can you bring that favorability rating up as these debates and these state contests continue? Will that also bump up?
Well, in Gallup, before all the negative advertising in Gallup, I was like at 62 or 63% favorable. So I think one of the advantages which Reagan also had when he was 30 points behind Jimmy Carter about this point in 1979-80 is that you end up looking when people actually see you, you look so much better than the news media version that you immediately improve your standing, and I think that'll happen here too.
Newt, we only have about 30 seconds here. Mitt Romney's folks said that he pays close to the 15% rate, obviously, on his investment income, this coming after the push to have him release his tax returns. Is there anything wrong with that? I mean, he pays, I guess, for the most part, what Warren Buffett pays.
In my tax plan, I have an optional 15% rate for everybody. So, Romney ought to be in favor of my flat tax proposal, which I got from Steve Forbes and from Hong Kong. Then everybody could pay the Mitt Romney rate. I mean, that would be terrific. And second, he ought to release his tax records, because how do we know what he paid? All you've got now is his consultant's spin, and I think he owes the people of South Carolina to release his 2011 record before the primary on Saturday.
Newt Gingrich, we appreciate your joining us, sir, and the idea of an alliance still floating out there. Newt Gingrich on the Laura Ingraham Show.